My stepdaughter said, "You are not my father, so do not tell me what to do." I was halfway through my morning coffee when I heard it. "I'm not your daughter. Don't tell me what to do." It started when I pointed out the mess she'd left in the kitchen. The sink was overflowing with dirty dishes, and the counter was littered with avocado toast crumbs. I had barely opened my mouth when Kylie cut me off with that sentence. It wasn't the words themselves that got me. It was the tone. That flat, dismissive, TikTok scrolling, iced coffee slurping tone that only an 18-year-old with a fully loaded credit card and zero responsibilities could pull off. Kylie sat across from me at the kitchen island, oversized hoodie, Nike shorts, her perfectly manicured fingers lazily scrolling through her phone. The only time she looked up was to roll her eyes before taking another sip of whatever overpriced sugar bomb Starbucks had sold her this morning. "Excuse me?" I blinked, setting down my mug. No response. Just more scrolling, more slurping, more eye rolls. It took a second for it to sink in. 5 years. 5 years of covering her orthodontist bills, dropping thousands on designer sneakers, taking her to Hawaii last summer because everyone else was going. 5 years of picking up the slack for a deadbeat dad who couldn't even send a birthday card. 5 years, and I was nobody. I exhaled through my nose, staring at the pile of avocado toast crumbs she'd left on the counter. "All right, let's back up a second. What's your problem?" She finally put her phone down, barely. "I need you to pay for NYU. That's it. No lead up, no softening the blow. Just a statement, like she was asking me to pass the salt." I let out a short laugh. "NYU? The same school that costs, what, 70 grand a year? Ugh, it's like 55? And yeah, duh, I already got in. Mom said you'd cover it. Mom said I'd cover it." I turned toward Emily, who was conveniently staring at her coffee like it held the answers to life's toughest questions. "You want to chime in here?" She sighed, rubbing her temple. "Mark, she's been dreaming about this since she was a kid." "A kid?" "She just decided this last week when she saw some influencer post about their NYU dorm tour. She's got no plan, no scholarships, no job lined up, just me and my checkbook." Kylie scoffed. "I don't need a job. You have money. That's why you've always helped out, right?" I swear to God, my brain short-circuited. "Come again?" She waved a hand like it was obvious. "You own a wine bar. It's like, fancy. You're loaded. That's why you're still around, right? Otherwise, why would you keep paying for me?" Emily shifted in her seat. "Kylie, that's enough." No. I want to hear this." I crossed my arms. "So that's what you think? That I stuck around out of some financial obligation? Not because, I don't know. I actually cared about you." She blinked, genuinely confused. "You're not my dad." And there it was. I sat back, letting out a slow breath. "Right, I'm not. I'm just a guy who paid for your braces, your dance classes, your weekend trips to LA, your new iPhone every year. But I'm nobody." Kylie shrugged, completely unbothered. "Exactly." I turned to Emily, expecting, I don't know, something. Maybe a lecture about respect. Maybe we'll talk about this later. But she just looked tired, like this whole thing was inevitable. "You don't have to pay for it," she said softly. "I just thought." "You thought what?" "That I'd keep bankrolling someone who doesn't even respect me." Kylie groaned, slamming her phone down. "This is so unfair. Do you know how embarrassing it is to be the only one of my friends not going to a good school? Dad said you'd pull this." I let out a humorless laugh. "Your dad? The same guy who hasn't sent you a dime since 2017? The one who lives in a small apartment and hasn't chipped in for years? He's got opinions about my finances now." She folded her arms, nose in the air. "At least he's not controlling." "Controlling?" I rubbed my temples. "Wanting a little appreciation for 5 years of financial support is controlling now. Emily finally spoke up. Mark, I think we should all just take a break. No, let's not. I pushed my chair back, standing up. I'll make this easy for you, Kylie. Since I'm nobody, then guess what? Nobody is paying for NYU. Nobody is covering your rent. Nobody is buying you another pair of designer sneakers. You want an education? Get a job. You want me to act like a dad? Maybe try acting like a daughter. Kylie's face went pale. You can't be serious. Oh, I'm serious. Silence. Heavy, awkward silence. Even Emily looked uncomfortable. Then Kylie scoffed, grabbing her phone. Whatever. I'll just ask Dad. He actually cares. I didn't even try to stop the laugh that burst out of me. Oh yeah? Let me know how that goes when he sends you just enough for a gas station snack. She stormed off, slamming her bedroom door so hard I swore I felt the foundation shake. I turned to Emily, waiting for her to say something. Anything. She just sighed. She's young, Mark. She doesn't understand. No, I said, grabbing my keys. She understands perfectly. And just like that, I realized something. I'd spent 5 years trying to be someone's father when she never wanted one in the first place. And somehow, that stung more than I wanted to admit. Looking back, I don't know why I thought it would be different. I met Emily at my wine bar. She was a numbers person, meticulous with details, working as a part-time accountant after her divorce, trying to keep things stable for Kylie. She had this quiet charm, polite, reserved, not the type to cause a scene. After a few months of her handling my books, one thing led to another, and we started dating. At first, things were smooth. She wasn't dramatic like some of my past relationships, and there was something comforting about her steady presence. Then I met Kylie. She was 9, all big blue eyes and bouncing curls, clutching an iPad and wearing a tiny Coach purse. Adorable. Emily had painted a picture of her as sweet and well-mannered, and in those early days, I believed it. Kylie was polite, even friendly, always asking for a sip of my soda or plopping onto the couch next to me with a pile of questions about my bar. But kids grow up, and so did Kylie's expectations. By the time Emily and I got married, I started noticing how Kylie's preferences shifted. Brand names became a necessity, and every conversation revolved around what she wanted next. Nothing extreme at first, just subtle things, brand names, the latest gadgets, always needing the best of everything. If she didn't have it, she made sure to mention which one of her friends did, like a walking infomercial for overpriced sneakers and handbags. I chalked it up to teenage entitlement, figured she'd grow out of it. Spoiler, she didn't. One Christmas, I surprised her with a MacBook, top of the line, brand new. Her face barely moved. Oh, it's not the rose gold one. The next summer, Emily and I spent a fortune sending her to a leadership camp. She spent the entire trip complaining about the awful cabins and lack of Wi-Fi. Meanwhile, Todd, her biological dad, was the greatest guy in the world. Never mind that he never paid child support, never showed up for parent-teacher meetings, never did a single thing that required actual effort. He was fun. He'd pop in with some grand promise. A weekend road trip, a shopping spree, and then disappear for another 6 months. But when he bailed, did Kylie blame him? No. She just waited for the next empty promise. I remember one night at dinner, she casually mentioned, Dad said he's getting me a Tesla for my birthday. Emily and I shared a look. A Tesla for a 17-year-old. From the man who once borrowed money from her piggy bank and never paid it back. Still, Kylie talked about it like it was a done deal. She picked out the color, the interior, even planned her first road trip. Meanwhile, I was the guy who actually got her places, driving her to fitness classes, covering her ridiculous Uber bills, fixing the dents she put in Emily's car when she barely tapped the mailbox. But none of that mattered, because Todd was getting her a Tesla. A week before her birthday, she brought it up again. I think I'll drive it to LA my first weekend. Road trip with the girls. I didn't even argue. I just nodded and sipped my coffee, waiting. Then on the big day, Todd showed up empty-handed, grinning like he hadn't just dropped the biggest letdown in history. Things are tight right now, sweetheart. You understand. But don't worry, I'll make it up to you. And just like that, the Tesla was gone. I braced myself for a meltdown, but Kylie just shrugged and turned to me. Can I take Mom's car? That's when it hit me. She never expected Todd to follow through. She just liked the fantasy. And when reality crashed down, I was the fallback plan. Again, I should have walked away then. Should have seen the writing on the wall. But I didn't. I kept thinking, kept hoping, that one day she'd see the difference between a promise and an action. Turns out, I was wrong. When Kylie turned 18, I thought I'd do something memorable. Not the usual cake and party hats deal, but something fitting for her new adult status. A night out, VIP lounge at a high-end spot, dress code, fancy hors d'oeuvres. The whole experience. She was thrilled. OMG, my college friends are going to freak out. That was the first and last time she even pretended to be grateful. The night started out smooth. Kylie, decked out in some designer dress she guilt Emily into buying, was taking selfies like she was about to get a magazine cover. Her friends arrived, equally overdressed, all squealing, and posing like reality show extras. I sat at the bar, sipping bourbon, watching the whole circus unfold. Then Todd showed up. Of course he did, because why wouldn't he? I saw him the second he stumbled through the entrance. Cheap suit, gold chain, oversized sunglasses, indoors. He had that sloppy confidence of a guy who thought he belonged but clearly didn't. And on his wrist, a Rolex, so fake it probably ticked out loud. I sighed. Here we go. He spotted Kylie and bellowed her name across the lounge. Heads turned. Kylie froze mid-selfie, her friends whispering. If she was embarrassed, she hid it well. Hey, princess. Happy birthday. He swaggered over, arms wide like some mafia boss greeting his heir. She forced a smile. Hey, Dad. I took another sip. Just an hour. I just needed to survive this for an hour. Then he spotted me. What are you doing here, Mark? This is my daughter's night. I should have ignored him, but Todd had a way of dragging people into his nonsense. I set my glass down, hosting the party. Since, I paid for it, Todd waved me off like I was a waiter who forgot his drink order. Relax, man. It's a celebration. Then he grabbed the mic. I knew it was over the second he tapped it. The whole lounge went quiet. Even the bartender stopped mid-pour. All right, everybody, a toast to my beautiful daughter. He threw an arm around Kylie, nearly knocking over her drink. I just want to say, Kylie, don't listen to this guy. Daddy's got you covered. And you know what? I'm buying you that Tesla, baby. A murmur rippled through the room. Kylie's friends gasped. She beamed. And me? I just watched the disaster unfold. Then Todd, because salty has never been his strong suit, grabbed someone's champagne flute and hurled it against the wall. The crowd collectively inhaled, and I could practically hear the mental calculations of the manager deciding whether it was worth throwing him out immediately. The crash echoed. Gasps. A bouncer took a step forward. And Kylie? She just stood there, like none of this had anything to do with her. I exhaled. That was it. That was my last straw. I picked up my coat, left enough cash to cover the damage, and walked out. Todd could have his grand moment. Kylie could believe whatever fantasy she wanted. I was done. I stepped into the cold night air, and for the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't before, relief. The fallout hit before I even had my first cup of coffee. Apparently, Todd's grand performance had gone viral before I even stepped out of the bar. I could already imagine the memes. By morning, Kylie's birthday disaster was the hottest gossip in her school. Psycho dad ruins party, busted Rolex at VIP lounge, and my personal favorite, Tesla or tantrum? When I walked into the kitchen, Kylie was already pacing, phone clutched in her hand, scrolling furiously. Her face was red, her perfect morning smoothie untouched on the counter. She spun around the second she saw me. "This is your fault." I blinked, still trying to shake off my sleep. "Come again?" She held up her phone like it was proof of a crime scene. "You humiliated me. If you hadn't been there, Dad wouldn't have made a scene." Right, because clearly I was the problem, not Todd, who had made an absolute fool of himself. Not the cheap suit, not the fake Rolex, not the dramatic champagne throw. No, it was all me. Emily stood by the coffee maker, gripping her mug so tightly I thought it might shatter. She looked exhausted, like she had aged 5 years overnight. I waited for her to step in, to say something, anything. But she just pressed her lips together and stared at her coffee like it held the answers to the universe. "Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? Everyone's talking about it. People at school keep sending me clips." Kylie's voice cracked, but whether it was from anger or humiliation, I couldn't tell. "I didn't force Todd to act like an idiot," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "That was all him. But you didn't stop him." I let out a humorless laugh. "Stop him? Kylie, I've been trying to stop Todd from being Todd for years. You think I have some magic remote that controls him? He's a walking disaster. You just refuse to see it." Her jaw clenched. "He was just excited for my birthday." "Yeah? Was he also just excited when he promised you a Tesla he can't afford? Or when he showed up drunk and embarrassed you in front of all your friends? Or when he threw a drink in the middle of a crowded bar?" Silence. Her eyes darted to Emily, as if waiting for backup. But Emily still said nothing. I sighed, rubbing my temple. "Look, I get it. You're upset. But maybe instead of blaming me, you should ask yourself why your favorite parent is the one who caused all of this." Her face twisted in anger, but before she could spit out another excuse, she stormed out, slamming the door behind her. The silence left behind was deafening. I turned to Emily, waiting for something. A defense, an apology, hell, even just a sigh. But she just stood there, shoulders slumped, eyes on the floor. "That's it?" I asked. "Nothing to say?" She exhaled, finally looking at me. "She's just young, Mark. She doesn't understand." "No, Emily," I said, my voice tight. "She understands perfectly. She just doesn't care." I grabbed my keys and walked out. For the first time in 5 years, I wasn't sure if I wanted to come back. The cold morning air hit me as I stepped outside, sharper than I expected. A couple of days passed, just enough time for Kylie's birthday disaster to fade from school gossip. Or at least, for her to pretend it didn't happen. Then the envelope arrived, bright white crisp with the iconic NYU logo stamped right in the center. It sat on the counter like some royal decree. Kylie must have been waiting for it because the second I stepped into the kitchen, she was already holding it, practically vibrating with excitement. I barely had time to pour my coffee before she spun toward me, practically bouncing on her heels, like she had just won the lottery. "I got in, and why you accepted me." Her voice dripped with the kind of giddy excitement I hadn't seen since she got her first iPhone. "I need $80,000 a year." I almost choked on my coffee. It took me a second to process what she had just said. Not a question, not a conversation, just a demand. Straight to the point, like ordering a drink at Starbucks. I set my mug down and let out a low chuckle. "And your real dad's got that covered, right?" Her smile vanished. "Excuse me? You know Todd, the guy with the fake Rolex and the champagne-throwing skills. He's the one you always call Dad, right? So he should be the one paying for your dream school." She scoffed. "That's not funny. He doesn't have that kind of money." I crossed my arms. "Neither do I." Her whole face twisted like I had just said the most offensive thing in the world. "You're joking. You own a business. You have savings. You're literally rich." I laughed again, but this time it wasn't amused. "Kylie, Do you even know how much $80,000 a year is? That's over $300,000 by the time you graduate, for a degree you don't even have a plan for. She threw her hands in the air. You're ruining my life. NYU is my dream. I leaned back against the counter, watching her unravel. I thought your dream was a Tesla? Or was it that Chanel bag last Christmas? Or maybe that week in Cabo with your friends? Funny how your dreams always seem to involve my bank account. Kylie let out a frustrated scream, her fist clenching. You don't get it. Everyone's going to college. If I don't go to NYU, I'll look like a loser. I shrugged. Then get a job. Take out loans. Apply for scholarships. That's what most people do. Emily, who had been silent through all of this, finally spoke. Mark, be reasonable. She's just a kid. She needs support. I turned to her, my patience hanging by a thread. A kid? She's 18. Old enough to make demands, but not old enough to take responsibility. Emily exhaled, rubbing her temples. You have the money. You could help her. I shook my head. That's not the point. She doesn't appreciate anything. She expects me to just hand over hundreds of thousands of dollars like it's nothing. Emily's voice dropped, controlled but firm. She's your daughter, Mark. Like it or not. I felt my jaw clench. No, she's not. Remember? That's what she said to me last week. I'm not her dad until she needs tuition money. The room went silent. For a moment, I thought that was the end of it. Then Emily straightened, her expression unreadable. If you don't pay for this, we're done. I blinked. Excuse me? She crossed her arms. I mean it, Mark. Either you step up as a father, or this marriage is over. I stared at her, the weight of her words settling in. I had always known Emily avoided confrontation, but this was something else. Kylie stood there, arms folded, chin tilted up, like a contestant on a game show waiting for the grand prize reveal. And for the first time in a long time, I knew exactly what I was going to say. I looked Emily straight in the eye and let the words roll out, calm and deliberate. Okay, we're getting divorced. Her face barely changed at first, as if she hadn't fully processed what I said. Then the realization hit. Her lips parted slightly, her breath caught. And for the first time in our marriage, I saw something in her eyes I had never seen before, panic. She thought I would beg. She thought I would crumble like a bad poker player with a weak hand. Instead, I grabbed my coffee, took a slow sip, and waited. Kylie's reaction, though, was immediate. She screeched like I had just declared the end of civilization itself. You're ruining everything. My life, my future, my NYU. I exhaled to my nose, shaking my head. I thought I was nobody to you, so why do you care? Her face turned a shade of red I'd only ever seen in toddlers mid-tantrum. You don't get to do this. You're just mad because you're a bitter old man. Emily finally found her voice. Mark, stop. You're being cruel. Cruel? I let out a short laugh. You just gave me an ultimatum. Pay for college or we're done. And now that I made my choice, you don't like it. Kylie stomped her foot. You have money. It's not like it's a big deal. Ah, yes, because dropping $300,000 is just like buying a latte. That did it. I set my coffee down and turned toward her, my voice sharper than before. You're right. I do have money. And guess what? None of it is yours. The air left the room. Even Emily seemed taken aback. Mark, I held up a hand. No. You both made it very clear what I am to you, a wallet. Well, that wallet is closing. You want to go to NYU, Kylie? Call your dad. Maybe he can sell that Rolex and put a down payment on your tuition. Her jaw dropped. You can't do that. I shrugged. Sure I can. I'm nobody, remember? And nobody isn't paying a dime. Emily stepped closer, fidgeting with the hem of her sleeve. Her voice softened. Mark, let's talk about this. No, Emily. There's nothing to talk about. You made this decision when you turned our marriage into a transaction. I married a partner, not a customer. Silence. A thick, uncomfortable silence. Then Kylie let out a sharp laugh, shaking her head. Whatever. Mom will take care of me. We don't need you. Emily stiffened, but she didn't deny it. I nodded. All right then. I'll have my lawyer reach out. You too take care. And just like that, I walked out. For the first time in years, I felt free. Walking away felt good. It felt better than I expected. But what came next? That was the part one had really been looking forward to. See, I wasn't stupid. I had a prenup. When I married Emily, I had already built my business. And I wasn't about to let someone take half of it just because they decided marriage was a financial contract. So when the papers were finalized, Emily got exactly what we both agreed to, nothing. The day the settlement was finalized, I got a text from her. Where am I supposed to go? I stared at it for a long moment before setting my phone down and heading out for a steak dinner. Best steak I'd had in years. She'd figured it out. She was an accountant, right? Numbers were her thing. Kylie, on the other hand, took the fallout harder. Turns out, NYU doesn't run on entitlement. Without my money, her acceptance letter was just a piece of fancy paper. She threw a tantrum when she realized FAFSA wasn't some magic credit card that paid for luxury dorm decor and weekend getaways. A few weeks later, I heard through mutual friends that she'd gotten a job at Starbucks. The same Kylie who once snapped at a barista for messing up her oat milk ratio was now the one taking orders. The same Kylie who once complained that walking to the fridge was too exhausting was now making lattes for minimum wage. Life's funny like that. As for Todd, he vanished. The man who had promised Kylie the world couldn't even be bothered to send her a gas card. The last I heard, he moved out of state, probably running from another set of debts. Emily and Kylie had no safety net, no trust fund, no wealthy benefactor to step in and fix things. And me? I was sitting on my patio, sipping a glass of wine from my own bar, wondering why I hadn't done this sooner. No more entitled demands. No more being treated like a walking ATM. Just peace. And let me tell you, peace is worth every penny I didn't spend on them. Selling the house felt like finally canceling a gym membership I never used. Instant relief, no more wasted energy. I found a sleek modern place with a view, something just for me. No more walking into a kitchen filled with someone else's mess. No more sinking money into a place that felt more like an obligation than a home. And, of course, I bought the car I always wanted. The kind of car I was told was impractical or too flashy, because, apparently, it was fine for me to fund everyone else's dreams, just not my own. Now, every morning, I took my coffee, slid into leather seats, and reminded myself that life was better when you stopped paying for other people's expectations. Then, right on cue, the message arrived. It was Kylie, predictably, a long, dramatic text about how she finally understood and how she had been going through a lot. She was sorry, she missed me, and oh, by the way, she was struggling financially. Not long after, Emily followed up with her own version. Less dramatic, more strategic. Something about how maybe we were too hasty and how we should at least talk. I didn't reply to either of them. Instead, I poured myself a glass of wine. Something expensive, something they'd probably say was wasteful, and sat back on my patio. I blocked their numbers, took a slow sip, and let the silence settle in. Funny how the quiet never felt this good before. I stretched out in my chair, took another slow sip, and let the night breeze remind me that peace was the best investment I'd ever made.